How about you do a Baruka jingle?
Oh, Barukas, we love them, we love them, we love them. They're the best nut in the world. Barukas, Barukas. Yeah.
That's the intro.
Well, that was us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Coming up with a theme song for one of Darin's companies. Let me tell you a little bit about Darin Olien, who I'm very happy is here with us. He is a wonderful guy, first and foremost. Before I get to all the New York Times best-selling author and the Emmy-winning TV personality, obviously the founder of Barukas, a superfood hunter. He pretty much coined that term. We have a very good friend. His name is Darin Olien. Welcome him to the podcast. Live audience, go ahead, go crazy. Blah, 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 blah. Go on and say welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for
thanks,
being here,
guys.
Darin. Yeah, this is. It makes a lot of sense for us to have you on the show nice and early in this whole process because, for me, you've been a very big source of inspiration and a source of knowledge. I mean, right after I met you, I read your book SuperLife, and there's not a lot of books that you sit down and you like read front to back. You'll kind of jump around with them or you'll get a little bored. That one I read front to back in a few days because it was so good, it was so well written, and it was packed full of really useful information, which is very much like your second book. Please excuse my ringer. It's just my wife trying to pick my kids up from school. Hopefully there's not a problem. Packed full of information. And your second book is just like that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I wanted to just kind of like talk to you a little bit. Obviously, guys, I know Darin really well. We've spent a lot of time together. We spent almost every morning together, actually.
I love the cuddles.
Yeah, the cuddling is good.
It's such a great way to start the day.
It's true.
Oxytocin.
Actually, you just reminded me.
vasopressin,
I'm going to add a topic of conversation here.
Cuddles.
Yeah, cuddles. That's what it says.
Cuddles.
But so one of the things. So I'll kind of fill you guys in a little bit on who Darin is and what he means to me. He's somebody that truly walks the walk, right? Like this is somebody that is very intentional about his life, the way that he lives it, the way that his routine when he wakes up, everything that he does in his life. There's a process for it. There's a reason for it, and he's somebody who has an incredible amount of self-control. An incredible amount of commitment, not just to himself, but also to humanity, because he cares so much about the things that he knows about that he really tries to share that stuff with the world through his books and through social media and his TV show and all the things that he does. So that's who we have sitting here with us today. A lot of information when it comes to health, nutrition, well-being, and living a super life. So that's Darin for you. And
love
if
it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
of
quite the
course.
intro, Brandon. I love that.
Is it?
Yeah.
You wait until I do your intro. You're gonna really love it. I've been working on it.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And without further ado, if you guys don't mind, I'll just get Darin starting to talk a little bit about. Maybe we can start with that. About how it is that you walk the walk, right? You don't just like talk the talk, but what are the kind of things and principles that you apply to your life that enable you to really embody the things that you are so lovingly preaching?
Well, it's even weird to have that as a question because why wouldn't you? When you learn something and you figure out something that's good for you, why wouldn't you do it?
Because they're hard. Because sometimes the right
conveniences.
path, well, that's exactly like the book, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well-
they're hard. They take effort. They take willpower. They take all these things, and it's so fun to sit down with a bag of Cheetos for the moment, right?
Right.
And sometimes that's hard for people to say no to. But you're somebody who really,
Well, I wasn't, I didn't just show up this way either. So it's like it's a journey and it's a practice and it's actions, it's awareness equals action equals result, right? And within that, it's you continue to evolve and transform and you get to line up further integrations, right? So you guys were talking about the program you're doing, right? So when you line up things that you know is inherently good for you, it creates this whole other energy effect And you can think of energy in many different ways. You can think of it literally as body energy, but it also is mental energy, and it's also environmental energy of like, what are you intending your life to be? So I find the snowball effect is kind of pleomorphic across my life. It's multi. So when I do something, yes, it applies more discipline in the beginning, right? So when you're trying to do a new habit, it often takes a little extra effort because you weren't doing that before. And then as you kind of going, yeah, this feels good. This is maybe hard. This is maybe challenging, but I know at this particular time in my life, I want to do it. I want to try it. And then over time, that starts to get integrated. And then you feel good about yourself. And then the great thing about health, and as all of us know, that you only know what you know at the time that you know it. You only feel how you feel at the time that you feel it. And that's why it's hard to say to someone, hey man, eat better. And they may think, yeah, it's right. Yeah, I want to, right? They're not doing it, but they want to. And there is this arc of transformation that you don't get to know, you don't get to experience it until you actually go through the albatross of that commitment, that wrestling with the I wasn't doing it before, whatever was keeping me from doing something good for myself is now there. So in that face of doing something different, you're inherently having to deal with call it a shadow side of yourself, call it the unconscious side of yourself, call it the saboteur, call it old programming, whatever it is, that will show up. And the delusion is that it won't. Guaranteed it's showing up. And so when it shows up, you can't, the disservice is saying it's wrong. And the disservice to you is saying that it shouldn't be there. It actually should be there. It has to be there. And in that pursuit, you actually become, I feel, it becomes an ally of like, okay, I'm doing something I haven't been willing to do. And by doing that, now the things that I wasn't aware of have to then present themselves. That comes out of the closet and go, shit, I didn't know that was there. Okay, let's face it. Let's look at it. Let's explore it. Let's talk about it. Let's journal about it. Let's go to our counselor about whatever it is. Getting to face the shadow, because the truth is that darkness, that shame, that fear, that anger, that resentment, whatever it's all covered up in, it's messy, is the propeller. All of that shame and fear and anger and resentment and unconsciousness, that is ultimately the propeller for us in this world. Because if everything was good, everything would be good. And we'd just be sitting here, right? But when we
You
feel
need
like,
balance.
yeah, if you feel like, oh, my body's not feeling that strong, and I'm having some aches and pains, and then so someone shows up, using your example again, someone shows up and presents a workout routine or a way of living for 75 days, you're only saying yes to that because of the minute amount of unconsciousness that you're aware of. And so you go, yeah, the truth is I'm not feeling that great. I don't feel like on purpose. And so then when you say yes to it, how much shit has come up along the way? But your discipline
Totally
is the thing that keeps steadfast. And then that discipline, I mean, Michael, like he's my buddy, Mike Tyson.
Mikey.
He says this all the time. Discipline is king. Because and then when you have that bigger reason of doing it, because we all have tried things and we haven't had the big reason. and it just falls away.
Yep.
And that's innately some of the bullshit reasons we give ourselves, because maybe, you know, you want to look better on fucking Instagram.
Yeah.
It's not a big enough reason for when the shit storm's coming.
Yeah.
Your shit storm, your bullshit you've been telling yourself, your bullshit you've been talking to you've been adopting from, you know, a bad day your dad had when you were 3 that said something to you that fucking created a whole different, you know, point of view about life, like these kinds of things. And then all of a sudden that thing presents itself and you're going, holy shit, I wasn't even aware of this. I didn't even know it had like this presence over me. And that's where fucking humbly you go, shit, like I was just starting this workout routine, and next thing I know, I'm crying over my dad, right?
Yeah.
But that's what. To answer your question, I mean, obviously there's many tangents here, but to answer your question, I think over time I've understood to the best of my ability, and I get humbled all the time, that this pain and challenge, it's coming. Life is gonna bring it to you. That is our ally. That's a propeller of this matrix that we're in. That I can bring that in and not make it wrong, not make myself wrong, that this is an opportunity, and the opportunity of becoming enlightened to something that I definitely was not enlightened to. And so that discipline, and then the freedom, man, the freedom of being released from some lie, because ultimately it's all a lie. It's an idea, it's a concept, it's a pain point that we've just aligned and agreed with for a period of time. And then you get to release that shit. Then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been carrying around that shit for so freaking long.
Yeah.
And you can easily go into a little shame around that too. I know I can, like, going, what the fuck am I doing, right? And I certainly have some recent examples of that. But so to button your question is integration gives me energy because it aligns with values and things I care about now in the best of my ability. And when stuff comes up, this book was 10 times harder than my first book. I wanted to quit 3 times significantly. It was so intense. And staying with it was the fight that my dad had in the last part of his life. So this book is dedicated to him because he suffered from chemical sensitivity. I feel that opened him up to depression, and then he picked up alcohol after 30 years of sobriety.
Wow.
I was going to ask about that, actually. When I kind of view the work that you've done, you're an environment person. You're looking at all of the inputs in our environment and how do we optimize those for our lives, right? And one of the things I learned was your dad worked on in the nuclear program for the U.S., and my understanding is he had some sort of health complications with that. And so was that sort of a catalyst for you to sort of, spend your life exploring these types of things, or were you already on that path even prior to sort of, discovery of that?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was so I was in college. My dad, so everyone, it's in my book, but my dad was one of the keepers of the dragon. And it's a patch, a naval patch, where you see the atom, and then the patch says keeper of the dragon. Actually, I'll post it. I was going to write a story about it and post it on my Instagram. And I lost it in the fire, but thank God my brother had one, and he took a picture of it. So he had another one, and so they were the ones getting the atomic bomb. It was a group of them, a handful of them, that would get the atomic bomb ready for deployment. And he was on the aircraft carrier
So they're
during-
dealing with the fissile material and
they're-
everything.
Yeah, they're dealing with the atomic
Wow.
Energy.
bomb.
Yeah.
And so, and he never got into a lot of details. I found out later in life, before he passed away, that he was involved in it. I didn't know for 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It came up when the I don't remember the JFK movie that Kevin Costner did.
Okay.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
Right.
So my dad was one of the aircraft carriers
Wow.
in the Cuban Missile Crisis when they're like, get the atomic bomb ready, right? So I was watching that movie with my dad when I was super young, and he started crying during that show, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? And then he kind of lightly talked about like I was involved in this stuff.
Wow.
And so that atomic, obviously uranium and radiation nuked, using it was a double entendre, nuked his thyroid. So he had to take medication. So yes, he was compromised. His endocrine system was compromised. So he developed chemical sensitivity to a bunch of stuff. So he wasn't able to later in life. This wasn't an issue. This was like when I was
Wow.
in my 20s, and he was sensitive to perfumes, colognes, fragrances, shampoos, deodorants, clothing, carpets, paints, you name it, and everything in
Wow.
the world.
And some of the things that you're naming there, that it goes back to your book, Fatal Conveniences.
Yeah.
For people that don't know, and even myself, like, what does that mean? And why did you title your book Fatal Conveniences?
Well, so this whole thing with my dad was happening 30 years ago, and so it put my radar up because I would have to use products that he would send me when I was going to see him. And so the radar was up already. I got into health and nutrition and physiology, and then I started realizing that the supplement world, why are these botanicals not in this product when it says it? Why are they, so then I got into that world, and so then I'd kind of be in fighting matches with flavor companies and kind of seeing like, you guys aren't saying what we're testing for. And so there was a moment I met this amazing Persian researcher named Dr. Mohsen Hermanish, one of the brightest, kindest, smartest human beings I've ever met in my life. And he told me 25 years ago, he goes, hey, take a look at this. Not to mention he was doing a lot of nutritional advanced, it's so deep in what he was doing and all the people he knew. I could tell you some stories about the room.
This is 25 years ago?
It's 25 years ago.
I would love to hear about that because I'm 22 for context, and
yeah.
just taking us back there to like what was being spoken about in those rooms.
well,
What was life like back then, man?
Like from a health conversation, I think it's
trippy.
like
Yeah.
being in California myself for the past 2.5 years and like taking health very serious and learning at a high level about, some of the things you talk about in your book. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, and like the lack of information about health, nutrition, and just seeing my family, and then thinking like, wow, like you were in these rooms 25 years ago, and it's just a whole different world, not only for me, but I think a lot of people that want to improve their life, and they want to know like, where was the seed planted in your life to start taking health serious? And outside of your father, like when did you start, being in those rooms where people were studying this?
That's a big question. I mean, there was a very distinct moment in college where I got hurt. My lower back got career-ending lower back injury in playing college football. So running into a linebacker really hard, and ultimately
That'll do it.
didn't work out so well. And then I was like depressed and pissed, and I can't play
relate.
anymore, and all of that shit, right?
I just to pause there, I had a neck injury playing football, 16, almost paralyzed, And
Wow.
there was like a 6 month in a neck brace depression. So I just want to say I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, it was and I beat out all these guys who were bigger than me and all that stuff.
I stubbed my toe this morning. I think I have an ingrown nail in my toe thing after stubbing it. I don't know. I wanted to be able to connect.
could
Sorry.
relate.
You should.
I wanted to be able to
was waiting
relate.
I
for
can
it.
relate to that.
Okay.
We'll just take the toe right off.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the catalyst to actually study, right? So study physiology, nutrition, kinesiology, all of that stuff. And then that was just it was a starting point. And along the way, I moved to Boulder, Colorado, had some researchers and retired doctors that just became friends because I was doing exercise therapy. And these doctors would give me, like, kind of before the internet was cruising, would give me all this nutrition data and say, this is the future. It's nutrition. It's not what I was doing in the medicine world, right? And so he was like, and I knew that, but I was just like kind of young. And then I met a pharmacist and I started selling some supplements and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. But when I became, just to finish the story, I became fascinated in psychology of people. So I got a master's in psychology, and then I moved to California, and then kind of in the process of finishing my thesis, I was like, what do I really want to do? I want to understand this consciousness stuff. So I started a little documentary, and I was like, I just want to go and film interesting people. And of course, I went to India, right? And I was like running all over the place in weird rooms and the Dalai Lama's oracle, channeling stuff. And at the same time, when I come back to California, I meet all these scientists, equally fascinating. And this is a big story. I don't know if you want to get into it, but one of those rooms was a small room in a house in Santa Cruz. I don't know if I've ever even said this story to you.
I haven't heard this.
In Santa Cruz, California, I said, hey, I'm investigating a bunch of stuff. I wanted to sound more official. Investigating a bunch of stuff, and I heard about this guy named Randy Masters, who I actually just reached out to, haven't talked to in years, 3 years ago, or 3 months ago. And I go, I'd love to show up and film what you guys are lecturing about and talking about. And he goes, well, why don't you just keep the camera at home? But since you came, highly recommended through some friends, why don't you just come? And so I jumped in a car at 5 a.m, got there at 10, and walked in this room, and there was Patrick Flanagan, who was at the time, he's passed away now, he was one of the smartest people on the planet, was working for NASA at 15.
Wow.
He was developing, he created this neurophone, creating frequency vibration patterns for memory enhancement. He was working with dolphin technology of developing ways to decipher communication between dolphins and humans for the military. He then let go of that so that he could, because he didn't like how they were taking care of that. And then I met Dr. Mosen there, who was talking about quantum nutrition and like from a whole different place. And then I met a guy from the military who was teaching our military special forces how to do remote viewing, how to be able to use your mind to go to specific geographical areas. And these guys all, and then I've never said this, I don't think, publicly. And then a guy sitting next to me was a maybe 77 to 80 years old, white T-shirt, pins in his pocket.
Protector.
Yeah, and crew cut, glasses. And when Randy was there, so they were talking about mathematics, and they were talking about gravity forces. They were all kinds of stuff. So Randy also has a he was a professor of music up there at USB, whatever they call it, and
Berkeley.
but he was also an expert in mathematics, and so he would take frequency and sound, and he would create all these different tones, and this is why this does this to the body, and so anyway, I'll just make this shorter. So when Randy was talking about the physics of frequency and shape, he was talking about he brought out a traditional Tibetan bell, and I'll just say the plot right now. It looks like, if you look at a traditional Tibetan bell, go ding.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a UFO, like it's the shape of a UFO, but you're not thinking that, it's a bell.
Yeah.
And so he starts talking about the frequency of it, what that frequency, he writes it down, the exact frequency, right? And then he says, when you spin it at an RPM, and then he does all the math of that at 60,000 RPMs per second. And then he writes down gravity fields, and he's going through all this math. I can't follow any of it, right? All these guys are in this. I'm the outsider,
Of course, right.
and I'm just going, what the fuck? And all of them, there's no reason why they're questioning me. They assume that everyone's in that room is
genius.
straight up understanding why we're here. And so Randy's going through all this mathematics, and this guy next to me is going through the math too. So at a little snack break in this kitchen, and keep in mind, we're in Randy's house in his living room, right? And he's got an easel. He's going through all this math, and he's super amazing. He's just like full of energy, good energy, and just like, and this, and this. So he's talking about this gravity and the gravity field and the RPMs and blah, blah, blah. And this guy, so at a break, I see this guy kind of like shaking his head next to me. I'm on the couch next to him. And at the break, I said, hey, hey, man, I'm trying to...
Hey, what the hell was he talking about, man?
Yeah, I was like, what were you checking? Like, what were you saying? Yes, he goes, yeah, all that math. All that math checks out. And I said, for what? And he goes, well, the unmanned space. I go, what do you do, dude? Mm-hmm. And he goes, I was the head of the unmanned space exploration for NASA for 40 years. And he goes, that's the same shape and mathematics of the spacecraft that we have looked at.
What's so funny? You had me listen to that.
The Bob Lazar
and Joe Rogan
which
podcast. Actually said something really
fascinating.
There was one thing that I loved in that podcast was when
I did not realize we were twisting there.
No, I know.
It
was an archaeological dig. I like how when they got into that, and I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. It makes sense that you dig one up. Rather
checks
than...
out. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a bit.
Yeah,
so those guys shaped something that.
Open your mind to a larger facet of the world.
And that's the tip of the iceberg. That was just day one, right? And then Mosen dives into this way of looking at nutrition and harmonics and biomimicry and sacred geometry as it really, because he was a sixth generation from herb farmers in Iran, and he was also a PhD in architecture. So he was the first people talking about carbon-based economies, how to create energy fields healthy in the body, and as well as the living situation. Yeah, man.
So when you
that's
before when you were talking about
all
how
of it's in my book.
Some people, you were talking about how some people the thing that motivates them is to look good on Instagram, or the thing that motivates them is to live as long as they can, right? What are the things that when you think of the reasons why you, and I don't call them, I shouldn't call them sacrifices, because you're clearly not making sacrifices. The hard work that you put in pays dividends in your life for sure. So they're not sacrifices. But what is the reason why you not only apply all of these tools to your life so diligently, but also why you why you spread the knowledge around nutrition and health and longevity as much as you do.
Well, I think it's very the simplest thing I can say to that is I don't want people to suffer.
Right.
You know, and you know, I saw my dad suffer. I suffered earlier in life. You know, being premature and having some weird things, and realizing that early on in life, when I spontaneously in the middle of Minnesota, I did a cleanse. My mom didn't even know what the hell was going on, right? 13, I started playing with food, and then of course I forgot all about that, and I wrote about it in my book, in the first book, and but then it was the first time I was like, I feel better, and this was a kid who's just a normal Minnesota kid, and I don't know if I had ADHD, but I had some weird shit. They were taking me out of class, they were testing me for stuff, learning disabilities and whatnot, and I was also medicating myself with about 5 bottles of Coke a day, just like cracked out of my brain.
Natural Ritalin, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Old
when
school Ritalin.
yeah. And then when old school Red, and then when I played with food, it was the first time I did something and realized how much better I felt.
Right.
And so it clicked something, and then cut to, I'm a normal kid. I'm very active, BMX and motorcycles and, always doing something. And then at 16, it's awkward as hell, and testosterone hadn't really kicked in yet. And I picked up my first dumbbell. And that's when it kind of all started to kind of make sense. Like what I eat and what I do, I can change this thing that I feel really, really vulnerable in. So much so at birth, I almost died, right? So I was 3.5 freaking pounds. So my first initiation into this life is you are fragile and you might die. And so that ran a lot of stuff in me. And so when I started to, here's a tool, do it.
Yeah, it gives you some control over your own well-being rather than just, leaving it up to chance and fate, and also breaks the story that you've, was programmed into you, which is, that you're right on the cusp of not being here.
Yeah. So then you're like going, okay, now testosterone's kicking in, 50, 60 pounds of muscle, focus, work my ass off in athletics. And, again, you're countering the fragility, and you're just going, oh, okay, like just work hard and do this stuff. And I like to work hard. And so like just being around, tossing bales of hay and bean walking and shoveling snow, like that's what we did.
Yep.
So like I'm not afraid to work. But then when you apply, consciously work builds muscle, and then it doesn't hurt that the girls liked it too.
So applying that kind of same question to your life now, now that you're not 16, you're an adult, and you've had such a great opportunity, so many good opportunities to get your message out there about trying to not have people suffer, right? And to try to share some of your knowledge in order so that they will not suffer. What have been some of the biggest things that you've learned from seeing your message and your words change people's lives? I'm assuming it's been really gratifying. I mean, I personally know what it feels like when you make music and it really helps somebody process something. Totally. I'm just curious to you as to how that's kind of benefited and enriched your life in seeing the incredible feedback that you've received over the years.
Yeah, man, I don't know if it gets much better than that.
Right.
Because it's the fabric of rewarding. It's the very definition of being so rewarding, because it's that very thing. Even if someone picks one thing and implements it, then I know that is going to be less suffering and more opportunity. So I mean, way back, in the days of formulating Shakeology, when this stuff first started, and people never would claim that any of my things would cure cancer and stuff, but people would come up and say all kinds of stuff. Like, I had cancer and I stayed with this instead of their toxic Ensure that they would give me.
Oh, right.
Which is full of,
Of course, right.
basically a new gasoline for cancer is this Ensure product. But
the protein drink.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm familiar.
yeah, it's a horribly formulated product, and it's regulated within I have a good friend of mine who actually is in the system of creating an amazing formula outside of that, and is going down the route of absolute verifiable, going against all of that stuff. So early days when that was happening, you're just like, wow, like, whoa, like, and it's easy not to receive it too. For me, I can certainly be better receiving it. And I think it's important to receive it, because I can tend to just go, okay, cool. What's next?
What's next?
Okay, cool. Like, okay. And it's like, okay, yep, cool. Got the book done. What's next? Let's do this new TV show. Yep. Okay, cool. And I'm trying to kind of dampen the brakes a little bit to just take in this effect, and even down to earth. That's just every day overwhelming in a certain sense, because people will be like now they see you out and about, and they're like, and I love that people feel so connected, that they feel, because it's not, I didn't act as another character. I was myself.
Yeah, they feel like they know you. People walk on the street, they're like, "Oh my God!" Yeah, they feel like they know you.
No, that's
like,
awesome,
dude. Like,
Yeah,
oh
it's a
my
nice
God!
feeling.
I changed my water. I changed my life. Then I read your book, and then I'm eating more plants. And like, come on, that's just so.
It's a rewarding feeling.
Oh man.
And speaking of the show, not to divert the question, but like, how did the show come about? You and Zac to create this incredible show, and like, what led to that and throughout your career?
Yeah, it was a serendipitous thing, man. So I was on, I think, second or third time on Rich Roll podcast, and talking about something, going off on something. And I think like a week or so later, Rich said, "Hey, I have a friend who is a mutual friend of Zac's, and Zac wants to reach out to you." And I was like, I don't know Zac, right? So I'm like, sure, whatever. Can I give him your number? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't hear anything and wasn't expecting anything. And
Thought he was going to put you in a movie.
Yeah, yeah, hoping.
Yeah.
Love interest. Every woman on the planet. Right. And then I got a random text. I know exactly where I was in my house, and I got a random text. He's very sweet. He goes, "Hey, man, heard you on the podcast. I'd love to connect with you. Love what you're doing, blah, blah, blah." And then we had a vegan meal in Westwood. And we sat there for a few hours just talking about everything. And he just, he's people see the show. He's a very sweet person that no one knows much about, right? And rightly so. He got accelerated out of a cannon at 15 of success, and he wasn't expecting it either. Clearly, how can you? And so there was just a nice serendipitous connection, and then just developing a friendship, and then just kind of happenstance. He said, "Well, what else you got going on?" I was like, I got this idea for this kind of show, and I wasn't pitching him. I was just telling him, like, people wanted to do a superfood hunting show for a few years, and I just it never felt right, and I kind of wanted to do that, but more. And then something clicked, and
he latched onto it.
He latched on, and then he talked to his whole team. He had an existing show at Netflix that they had done a pilot on, and no one liked it. So it was just kind of sitting there.
Wow.
The deal was done. And so they basically took the start of my idea. We brought it to production. I met everybody. Everyone was reluctantly accepting of Zac's decision in the beginning, and because they didn't know me. And next thing you know,
Wow.
first episode was in Puerto Rico, and we're diving into all the stuff that I cared about, and
Wow.
and then Zac cared about it, and so we had a bit of a lightning in a bottle, and then now, second season,
Yep.
four more Emmy nominations. which is
Amazing.
beautiful.
Congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations.
Can I pivot a little bit and talk about, so between all the superfood stuff and the fatal convenience, the things in our lives that sort of affect us that we may not realize, what's your methodology and how you approach? I'm sure you learn about some of these various things, the foods that are great or the things that are affecting us. Then what is your methodology with respect to sort of experimenting with it and trying to understand the underlying why or how these things are actually affecting us? Because I think one of the things for young people now is it's so hard to get reliable information from the internet now. Because if I search is coffee good for you? I'm going to find a million articles that tell me coffee solves every problem in my life. And if I say, is coffee bad for you? I'm going to see 19, research papers why coffee is going to give me cancer. So how do you approach the problem of dissecting what is real and what is kind of bullshit?
I mean, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. This information overload of to answer that question, firstly, saying that some of the top scientists, one of the most, I forget his name, but he's one of the most cited, if not the most cited research editors on the planet, and he will say the more that there's interest in the area that's being studied, the more corrupt the research will actually be.
Makes sense.
So there's this direct correlation between what you're looking at. Some of the stuff's pretty easy. You look at a chemical profile, phthalates, it's in a bunch of stuff, and you just start doing a bunch of research. Listen, I had 20 researchers doing this thing with me because it was impossible. It was wildly impossible to get through all of it. And so the first thing is, for everyone listening, I won't necessarily say my approach, but the approach or a approach would be, yes, look at the label. And it's that age-old thing. If there's a bunch of chemicals and you can't pronounce them and they're going in your body or on your body or close to your body, it's probably a really bad idea of exposure over time. Right? And that's the deal. The stuff is, if you put that lotion that has phthalates and parabens and fragrances in, or likely and probable carcinogens, endocrine disruptor, it's not going to kill you tomorrow. But it's going to start affecting a very, very delicate system of your body. And that is your hormonal system, right? Yeah. And so when you start introducing these things added up over time, and then added up heaps of chemicals over time.
Yeah.
Right. Heaps of different
the whole
products.
equilibrium is just off now.
Now we're swimming in it. We never get a break from it.
Right.
And these are largely biologically unassimilative and unrecognizable. So it creates a cascade effect. So you've got hormonal changes. We talked a little bit about phthalates, how they have these estrogen mimicking binding receptors, which then creates a whole other false reading of estrogen in your body, which throws off a lot of things. It also dominates the receptors, so then testosterone has a hard time functioning. And so now when you start shifting that, and then you have, on average, a woman and men, on average, between 100 and 120 chemical exposures every day, all day.
Wow.
you're the problem is a lot of the studies and a lot of the quote unquote regulatory bodies are only testing 1,000 plus out of 60 to 80,000 chemicals,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and again, they throw it out in the world, and then only upon the overwhelming evidence of effect or challenge or condition
Right.
or cancer,
Then
or
they recall it.
Then
or
they-
whatever.
yeah.
then they recall it.
Better to ask for forgiveness than for permission, kind of a
Or
thing.
just keep it in the line item, the payouts, the fines, the everything else, which they do.
They budget for
Right.
these things.
They budget for it.
They
right.
budget for it. So that's the wild west of it, and that's the the big kind of corporate side of it. There's great people also in those companies trying to do the right thing. Some of which, hell, even the if you ask a lot of the people in the law firm who's are fighting some of this stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of them used to be in industry because they got so frustrated that industry's not changing.
Right.
So then they become an advocate for efficacy and doing the right thing on the other side because they've been in it,
Yeah.
right? So when you stare at this stuff, so it's not easy to identify. So going back to the easy part, you look at labels, everything else, and there's all this other stuff that are never going to show up on a label.
And can you be sure that the things that are on the label is actually, I mean, I think what you're alluding to, like, is actually what's in the product?
No.
So how
That's the
does a
short
regular how do regular people, how should we approach this? Because I suspect we live in a world where it's impossible to just avoid this entirely, but
Yeah.
what are the steps that regular people can take to sort of optimize their life?
Well, first,
Without being totally inconvenienced.
Yeah, and then being completely obsessed
Yeah.
over it, right?
Yeah.
Hypochondriac. So the thing that the understanding is, I think of it as it's pollution and stress. You don't have to have a PhD in all these chemicals to understand the 60 to 80,000, right?
Yeah.
But think of it as when we're exposed to it, even in small amounts, it's stress on the body, right? And then that has effect in it. So it's pollution equals a stressor, and then it's never stopping. So that's how I would set it up in terms of people understanding. And then I would really take the approach of going in to out, implementing these things. If you open up your mouth and you're consuming things, start there. Clean up your water. They did amazing studies, 2,800 communities around the U.S., approximating 200 million people's water. There was all of that was likely very toxic water.
Wow.
And there's a lot of different studies pointing to what toxins and what areas. But PFAS, which is a derivative of Teflon that shows up in your flame retardants that they're, couches and mattresses, the non-stick wrappers,
Waterproof.
the waterproof,
And that's a forever
clothing
chemical too, right?
So, these are forever. So then you get into this classification of it gets lodged in your blood. It goes in your bloodstream. It gets lodged in fat tissue. There's a term now called obesogens that they're starting to use because the body's great going, oh shit, that's dangerous. Shove it into fat tissue. And then it also leads to metabolic conditions and potential endometriosis because it's also an endocrine disruptor. So going back to, again, it's rabbit holes of a lot of this stuff, but what you're consuming, the water you're consuming, clean that up. So reverse osmosis, remineralize it. With
Regular filters not enough.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not getting out. The water is an amazing convenience. We can go turn on the water and we have it on demand. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Unbelievable.
We forget how.
We forget.
Yeah.
Still a lot of parts of the world where you can't drink the water.
Of course.
2.2 billion people don't have
Amazing.
access.
Amazing.
2.2 billion.
Yeah.
Right? On our watch. It's a whole nother.
And even our southern neighbors, like you can't drink water in Mexico, you'll be sick. So
Yeah.
uh,
You haven't adapted to
You haven't
their
adapted to it.
microbiological system.
fair.
You could drink it. Yeah, you'd just be shitting yourself for a few days.
Yeah.
But then you'd build up a nice
Nice
strong,
and-
healthy
nice,
gut,
strong-
buddy.
There you go.
Yeah, exposure. So an RO system, a distillation system of cleaning your water, add some electrolytes back in it, and at least now you've gotten rid of many of the chemicals, because the water treatment, just quickly, the water treatment plants are set up doing the bare minimum that's not going to acutely kill you, right?
Yeah.
So typhoid, dysentery, diphtheria, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. But there's also interactions with the chlorine that they have to put in there of organic material, which are then carcinogenic. So we don't get into that. Again, all of this stuff is no one's testing the interaction of all this stuff. And that's where we have, dioxins and triclosan and trimethyl methanes of the organic material from the chlorine. It's like carcinogen, probable carcinogen. And so like, hey man, a lot going on, clean up your water. Add the electrolytes back in it. At least then you're starting from that. And then a food, right? 60% of Americans are eating ultra-processed food for their overall calories. It's largely chemicalized food, right? It's not even food anymore.
Can I read it from the book, because it's pretty wild. You said that the top calories that people are eating in the United States, grain-based desserts, meaning not only cookies, cakes, donuts, pies, which are essentially
one.
desserts.
That's
Number one. Number two.
Calories consumed.
desserts.
Yeah. Number 2 is bread. Number 3 is chicken. Number 4, soda, energy drinks, and sports drinks. Number 5, pizza. Number 6, alcohol. Number 7,
Wow.
pasta. Those are the top. That's the way that most Americans are getting their calories. That's the top.
Wow.
Top 6.
So then you go cut to Mayo Clinic study, did a light study on lifestyle, what people are eating, and how much exercise. Not aggressive at all. Just a few days a week.
Yeah.
You're moving, you're eating, all that stuff. 2.7% they deemed were healthy in America. Only 2.7% of the people were deemed healthy. So we're sprinting towards all of our conditions. We have zero resiliency, right? And then you add on top of that kind of food you're eating, the chemicals that you're being exposed to, and then, God forbid, any extra bacteria or virus, you have no ability, virtually none, to be resilient in life, because we've now created this modern day chemical romance that we're being kind of blasted by, and it's undermined. That's a crazy thing. This stuff, you talk about endocrine disruption. What does that actually mean? What are all of these things? You take cell phone proximity, endocrine disruption, probable carcinogens. You look at what's going on. The great book, I interviewed Dr. Shanna Swan. She's got an amazing book on endocrine disruption called Countdown. And our sperm count is plummeting. So sperm's not in men, it's not even barely working anymore, and they predict we won't have any that works at all, except the
Notice
rare.
this is like popping up, and just
You can come to my house because I got so many damn kids. You're looking for a problem with sperm. Come on over there.
no, but purely anecdotally, like a lot of my friends, I hear it's difficult to get pregnant now for a lot of people, and I'm sure this has some sort of connection to that.
Big time,
Yeah.
big time. And and men's testosterone, it's plummeting, right? So and then they just move the normal range. So when a doctor says, "Oh, you're in normal," that doesn't mean it's optimal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's normal. Yeah, now.
Yeah.
You're normal for
You're
now.
all you're all fucked.
You're all
but you're all
normal.
fucked equally.
Yeah, exactly.
Normal based on what? The 97% of people that are eating like shit and not
Yeah.
feeling well
Right.
in America? Like,
That's
I
right.
don't want to be, no. That's not who I want to be measured against.
Right.
In your opinion, where do you see real change happening? Because I think
This
nowadays
change right now.
there's the
This.
education, the conversations,
Yeah.
but then there's so many habitual like bad habits in eating
Mm-hmm.
that it passes down from families. And I can speak for just the family I come from and the lack of education around that and what they eat.
Yeah.
It's hard to go backwards and tell them to change everything about their life. Like, where should people start if they're coming across information like this for the first time, but they're in an environment or they grew up in an environment where they don't even know that they're eating bad, but they're just so in the machine of, the top 7 things that people
Well,
are.
it's an incredible thing that we deal with in this country, really around the world, but especially in this country. I mean, there's like, you're in California, you also lived in Boulder. Those are 2 places that are very, very health conscious, and they're full of people that are kind of searching to figure out a way to be healthier.
Yep.
And then, you are referencing your hometown, and I've spent a lot of time in different parts of the country, and where my mom is from Memphis. I was just in Nashville for a while, which is changing a bit, but there's a large swath of our country that just, I don't know if it's, and this is a question really. Where is that discrepancy of information? Like, how does that even happen, where some people are privy to information and also even like look a certain way, and then you go to other places around the country and I don't know if it's like they don't even want to hear it, if it's a part of their culture, or if the algorithms of information basically just aren't serving them at all.
I suspect there's probably a financial side to this as well, because eating healthy and all that
Absolutely.
is not cheap,
Right.
right?
that
Well,
is a part of it.
You can make a hell of an argument saying all that's programmed too. So you have food
Right.
deserts in the middle of cities. You have kids that have never seen a fresh piece of fruit or vegetable. They have no access to it, right?
They got the frozen dinners. And
yeah.
In the
you
middle
have-
of cities, you said.
Yeah, you have all over the United States.
Right.
Right? So now the economic disparaged people who are in these areas, they have no access, and yet government funded subsidized fast food is on every fucking corner. We are subsidizing the wrong food,
Yeah.
right? So why would we not subsidize whole healthy food? We also have 47 million acres of lawn in the United States. Half of that, grow some food. Playgrounds, half of it, grow some food. Teach kids. Every time I talk to agronomists and people who want to educate, they go to kids, and kids thrive in the dirt. They thrive learning about how to grow. They freaking love it because that's the truth. It's the nature that we are all connected to. So if we just go back to this stuff, and we can do this, without a doubt we can do this. We can eliminate food insecurity. Go to these areas first. There's areas in LA that you walk down the blocks and everyone's growing their own food in the middle of LA. And you inspire people by doing it more. You go outside, fresh arugula and nettle and like all this stuff, and your neighbor has way too many tomatoes. That's the cool thing about nature. Nature's abundant. You take one pomegranate seed, you put it in the ground, it grows. You get 70 pomegranates. Every pomegranate has about 700 seeds. You follow her, you follow nature, and you get over this fucking idea that we know more. We have side effects with every time we step in and do more. Go back to what we know. We founded this fucking country on farming. Lincoln started the USDA. The big slip up was they also created the Homestead Act, and it was supposed to support the growth of farmers because they knew the population was increasing. It was supposed to support the Homestead Act for the farmers to continue to proliferate. You know what fucking happened? Corporations started coming in some sort of loophole that they were acting as homesteaders and they just had people as proxies. And then the next thing you know, in 40 years, we had lost 90% of the people in America were growing our food. And then 40 years, we went to 40, and now where we're at, 2%. And it's conventionally grown. And it's pesticides and herbicides and linked to cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension, diseases. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, so this book, Brandon knows, you know how many swear words were in this? From me. When I'm staring at the research, I'm reading the history. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember you talking about how pissed off you,
Oh my
you
God.
would get after doing a bunch of...
It's so incredible to hear it, to read some of that history, right? To read some of that, like the start. I mean, my EMF chapter, like that was me diving into the electrification of the country. Because the more I looked, I go, I have to understand how we got here. Because what are what is electricity? What are the frequencies? What are the electromagnetic fields coming off just electricity? And then you dive into it going, holy shit, they knew that it was causing biological harm in mammals and migratory patterns of birds when they put up the fucking first telegraph. Wow. So this shit dates back. This is so convenient. Life changed when we created light, right? Of course. However, it's got some links to some gnarly stuff. So the history of this stuff is it all really did start with a great idea. Like, you know, it had great intention, but then there's some interest that probably had a bit of power and profit dictating the health and safety, and that's what I've been staring at for a long time.
Totally. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to do was to just kind of get I wanted to kind of condense some of the stuff that's in this book for listeners, right? Yep. If they haven't gotten the book yet, or if they just kind of want to get some ideas on how they can improve their life in small ways. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things and just give me like quick fire answers. Like I'm going to say something and I want you to tell me how they can continue to practice this convenience, because it is a convenience, and you probably don't want to lose these in your life, but how can you continue to do these things in a much more healthy way, right?
Okay, I'll do my best.
And we talked a little bit about it, but I'm going to say it again. I want you to talk about it again really quickly. Water.
RO system in your house, countertop or under the counter. Filter it. Add electrolytes, easiest solution, not that expensive. Buy yourself a glass container.
Yeah, and I've done that with my stuff per your recommendation. The RO filters are not even that expensive.
RO filter?
Reverse osmosis filters. And there's one, I think it's called Water Drop. That's the one that I have, and they make a few different stages of them. But even if you're on a budget, you can get one that's really not that expensive at all.
Yeah. I use AquaTrue. Everyone goes to my site, they automatically give you $100 off.
Great. And there was another good quote in your book that said it a lot better to give money to the grocer than to your doctor, right?
Yeah.
So if it means being able to, water is a very important thing. It's something that we all, it's 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, and 3 minutes without air. Which I'll just jump to the next one then. Air quality. What can people do to improve the air that they're breathing, even if you're living in a place where the air quality is bad?
Well, there's some great air doctor. There's air filters. Change the filters, clean the filters every couple months. Open up the windows.
Right.
Easy.
Is there a level of filter? Do you have to go up to a HEPA through your whole house, or just constantly, I don't know.
If you can afford it, yeah. Depending on, like, if I lived in a city, I would definitely increase my air filtration system.
Level, yeah.
You get some monitoring if you really want to get gnarly, and it's not that expensive. So just an air filter monitoring system that you can goes outside, and you just have a monitor. And
It's a good idea.
yeah, it has both.
Because it's
actually.
probably a
good.
balance too with indoor and outdoor, right? Like if you just got fresh, brand new, cheap carpet in your house, you're probably going to want to open the windows up, right? But if you're opening the windows up in a place where the air quality isn't that great, maybe a bit of a trade-off. So it'd be good if you're living in a place where the air quality isn't great, make sure that you're getting things that are either like, pre-owned, so that most of the off-gassing is kind of happening, all that stuff, and try to make your inner environment as clean as possible, so that you can shut the windows, run an air filter, and be breathing clean air on the inside.
Because they call their home your second skin. And now, because of most of the products that are inside, our air quality is often worse indoors as it is outdoors.
Wow.
Okay. I knew a guy that had second skin also. Okay, so flossing and toothpaste, because that's something that I'm not giving up flossing. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, no. Don't give up flossing. It's good for your teeth. Just give up the that thin
Glide.
that glide.
Yeah.
That slippery stuff is PFAS. So that's a chemical that you don't want in your mouth, and has been linked to.
What are those floss picks? Is that what they use on that? The little floss picks. It's
well, if they're plastic and stuff, there's probably some sort of BPH or BPA epoxy type of resin.
I want to start a good floss company that makes.
What floss do you use? I gotta ask now.
So, there's one that's a nice sustainable carb. I forget the brand name, but it's a charcoal, which is antibacterial, antifungal. And then I also have a Bite toothpaste.
I love Bite toothpaste.
Yeah, so Bite's amazing.
I don't know about Bite.
And that's also a great segue into toothpaste. The toothpaste, you can get rid of tubes. You don't need any tubes anymore. You don't need all the
waste, right?
Yeah, all the waste, and stay away from the fragrances, the fluorides. Get rid of all that stuff. Again, Bite is kind of that's what I use. So it's clean products, and you just take a little pill, and you chew it, and then you just brush normally.
It's amazing the trade-off.
Wait,
you bite. It's like a mint.
It's a pill, and then you brush with the dissolved pill.
Yeah, you just chew it up.
Interesting.
Tablets.
A few bites.
Does that have a flavor, or is it just chalky?
No, it's great.
It's great.
I had the founder of my podcast, and we talked about this.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. It's amazing the trade-off too of incentive, right? So, like I took my daughter to the dentist recently, and she had to get a filling, and then she was going to go back for another one, and the dentist gave her like some prescription grade fluoride toothpaste. Where I was just like, I looked at this thing and I was like, oh, no, it's not coming anywhere near, right? It's amazing that, like the dentist's job is to like make sure that when they come back that they don't have to do this thing, but they're willing to sacrifice my daughter's IQ potentially, right? Because I had read in the book, right, that it's it can affect your brain health basically.
Wow. Yeah,
fluoride toothpaste.
Yeah, it's a
neurotoxin.
By the way, they put fluoride in the water
Drinking
too.
water,
So it's another. And where did it come from? Fun fact. That's not so fun. The aluminum industry byproduct, and the pesticide industry. That's where the fluoride's coming from, ladies and gentlemen.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
All right.
Thank you. Let's put that in our mouth.
All right. So lotion. Yeah. I'm going to say something before you jump in. Lotion is a really nice thing. It's nice to like if you wash your face and then you get out of the shower, it's like if I don't put lotion on, I feel like I'm going to fucking dry up like a prune.
Yeah.
But one of the other possibilities, one of the other things that you can do is actually allow the oils to stay on your skin, right? Like we are also kind of like overwashing ourselves, right?
Yes.
By just taking a
Drying
big
it
thing
out.
of bar soap and just going over our whole bodies. When would we actually really have done that as natural human beings? So it's always good to have nice clean junk. I like that.
Easy to say that when you're married.
It's true. You like your butthole to smell just fucking fresh, don't you?
Oh, it took a turn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say butthole?
You said the quiet thing loud.
Oh, right. I said the quiet. I meant scrotum. I'm sorry.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, wash those places, but you don't have to wash your whole body. And back to the face and back to the skin. The skin has natural moisturizers within it called sebum, right? And every square inch got 2,500 to 6,000 different making units of our own moisture. So when you've gotten used to, and your skin has gotten used to and gotten so dry, and that mechanism gets suppressed, then now your skin's addicted to it, and then you keep going back to it. And usually these things are very, very drying moisturizers. So I think of moisturizer more as nutrition. You want to think of your skin, you want to think of nutrition for the skin, not as a moisturizer, because again, think of it. It's all of this stuff is kind of telling you your skin's not enough. You're not enough. You need to do these. It's broken. You know, you need a pill.
Right.
You know, I don't, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, like, we're not dying of a injection loss. Right, we're not dying of drug. I lost my train of thought. But the point is that when you've gotten used to that kind of interaction, then you get used to it. So you want to think of nutrition. So you can think of like there's a great company called Truth Treatments, which has got the highest natural form of vitamin C, not ascorbic acid, but natural vitamin C, so it absorbs in the skin. You have an electrolyte mist. You go back to nature, and it's some of the best ever.
I look over at you, and it's amazing to think that you're 71 years old. Also, it's like incredible. They probably didn't know that. Isn't
Wait,
that
you're
amazing?
71 years old?
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I just wanted to see if I could
I'm like, no way.
get Jordan. Jordan's
How
mind
is that?
was blown right there.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
I was like, fucking hell. How
No, he's
be
only
my
67.
guru here.
Okay, deodorant. And when I say deodorant, I really mean antiperspirant, because if I would agree that, like, if there's one thing that people could cut out of their life, especially women probably because of breast cancer, but like getting rid of antiperspirant is probably one of the best things that you could do if you're using that on a daily basis. Am I right?
Yeah,
Let me just say, the aluminum-free stuff, that shit doesn't work.
Right. Well, the aluminum-free stuff. Well, the aluminum.
I don't know if that's the thing.
But
that
anything
in
that
those
keeps
things.
you, but anything that keeps you from releasing toxins that you would normally do, whether even if it's aluminum free, is part of the reason why it's just bad for you, right, in the first place.
The smell is coming from sweat, which is mostly urea, right? Interacting with your on-surface skin microbiome.
Right.
So then you can make the argument, well, what are you eating? How are you taking care of yourself? Like, what's on your... And then think about that now. If you're slathering with lotion all the time, you're changing your microbiome.
Right.
And now you're like, well, I stink more. So then it's like this vicious loop. Now, listen, if you want to go back to aluminum that's connected to cancer...
Yeah.
You know, certainly women and breast cancer vary the proximation with that, and it also is plugging up your pores and stuff, stopping those glands from actually doing their job.
Right.
So find a natural deodorant, aluminum free, and keep. I have several in the book.
It's like holding in your pee too long. You know, you don't want to hold any of that stuff in too
Schmidt's.
long. Get rid of it.
Yeah, I think Schmidt's is one. Wild is another one.
Isn't Tom's also aluminum free?
Tom's could be. Native is another one. Yeah, there's several. Bite has
They just launched that recently.
They just launched that, and it's all sustainable packaging and stuff. So, I like all those.
Love that.
Two more. Laundry detergent. What can we be doing differently?
Make your own. Make your own. Do it with your kids. Teach them how to make it with their own essential oil, Castile soap, baking powder. If you want to whiten things, use hydrogen peroxide. You can make a mason jar, and you can have 60 loads.
Great.
Make it yourself.
Great.
Wow.
We've been using some really, I think they're pretty natural, but we moved to the sheets instead of doing that.
yeah.
You know, because I mean, dude, you go into like a store and you see the laundry detergent, just all the plastic by itself is just overwhelming. I'm like, wow, look at these, like they're like
Buckets.
buckets of just laundry detergent, you know, and that's something that we really try to stay away from is buying plastic. So the sheets have been really good, and I know that they're made by some natural thing. So that's another option if you're maybe not going to make your own. I don't know if it's Darin approved, but it's Brandon approved. But I don't know what that means. Last one, Wi-Fi.
Shut it off at night.
Right.
Wow.
At the very least, shut it off at night. It's stress on your body. It's affecting your sleep. If you affect your sleep, it's going to affect every part of your life, right? You can Faraday cage your Wi-Fi router. You can put literally a cage that Dr. Faraday back in the early hundreds, it depolarizes some of the polarizing radiation. Polarizing radiation is what all this electronics that we created. Depolarized radiation is what the sun is, right? It depolarizes. You hang out long enough, it can cause problems. If you polarize it, an example is taking a magnifying glass and burning something. Think of that. So that's what polarizing radiation. So Wi-Fi routers, smartphones, laptops connected to endocrine disruption, lowering testosterone, free radical damage in the body, immune system overreaction, proximity. Again, this is proximity and time. How close it is to you over time.
Yeah. If you're talking on the phone, cell phone next to your head all the damn time, something bad's going to happen. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Same thing with routers. And
So that guylomas, tumors, all of that stuff shows up in the studies, and we need more studies. But this is a big rabbit hole. The electromagnetic fields, the telecommunication. Think of it as it's pollution you can't see, smell, or taste, but it's here, and it's literally affecting your biology. So minimize the stress, the exposure. If you have a cell phone, turn it on airplane mode when it's on your body.
Great.
Wow.
And then the other, the last thing I'll say is that I think it would be really beneficial for other people to be exposed to some of the breath work stuff that we end up getting into that I know is a daily practice of yours. It's a very cool thing that it would really, I think it could really improve people's lives. I know that in doing breath work myself, that it's something that has really kind of changed my relationship with my breath and with oxygen and CO2, and you become kind of like very familiar with how it affects you. So we'll do that maybe offline once we sign off. That's for another time, or we'll have to have you back for a breath work thing, or you and I can do like a little video you can lead us through. But that'll be the next video.
good.
Darin will lead us through some breath work. But thank you very much for
That'd be
being
great.
here, Darin.
Oh,
That
man.
was
Thank you,
Thanks
Darin.
that was
for coming.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, very inspired.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks so much for having us. Thanks so much for coming on, Darin.
Casey's been sitting like this the whole time because he's just, he's so excited about all this information. This is right up his alley.
Yeah.
Also,
No,
he's
yeah.
doing the 75 hard thing. That's what you were
Now
referring
you're
to
at what,
earlier.
80 hard by now, right?
81 hard. He's going 100 hard. That's what
When
he's
you're-
doing.
if you're unfamiliar with it, the name is it's like, what is that? But yeah, 81.
81.
Feeling good.
81
Some people
hard.
will they'll never know.
They'll never
They'll
know.
never know.
No,
They
yeah.
leave
Google
it up to your
Google it.
imagination. Yeah. Yeah, Google.
It's going 81 hard.
Yeah, exactly. 81 and still hard. That's what
Yeah.
you should Google.
Yeah.
That's what you should Google. All right. Thank you guys very much. That's been the Questions Podcast with Darin Olien, and join us next time.
Yeehaw.